Welcome to a rare video for me. In fact, a bit of a first, mostly because I've very occasionally get Legends in and occasionally get GS450s in, but never ever had two together. And it just seemed like too good an opportunity to miss to actually put them together side by side, because generally I drive them sort of months apart in the normal way. So it gives me an opportunity to do this video. It is purely an opinion. I'm not going to be doing 0 to 60 times and brake tests and skid pan. It's just going to be seat of the pants, visual, and it's my own personal opinion, which will be different from many other people's, I'm sure. Basically what I've got here is a GS450 hybrid and a 3.5 Legend. They both produce pretty much identical horsepower, around about 290 horsepower or so. So in that sense, it's quite a fair test. But what I want to do is just, given time has gone by, we're looking at sort of 13 and 12 years old, whatever they are, to see how they stand up to each other, but also compared to some of the others, really. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go around the cars just very briefly, because when they're side by side here, you get to see the front ends straight away, the face of the car, if you like. I'll stick my hand up straight away. As most people know, I'm a Honda man through and through. I love my Lexus cars as well. I have to say, looking at the front of the cars, immediately my eyes are drawn to this one. I think it's a classier front end on the car. Again, not particularly well received when it was new, but as time goes on, as is pretty much always the case with Japanese cars, they age very well, and suddenly it all makes sense. They're kind of way ahead of their time. The Legend, by comparison, is probably the only angle I'm not over fussed with. It's a bit obvious. It's kind of a big Accord look of the time. It's not particularly prestigious in the way it looks, but it works. But if I was going to pick one of the two, it would definitely be the Lexus from the front of the car. When you get to the side of the car, the quarter angles, suddenly the Legend starts to make sense. It's got a kind of sort of bum high arrow kind of stance to car. It's got a very, very nice stance, I have to say. It's sort of parked up on the verge, and it looked really, really smart. And then when you go around the back of the car, again, the three-quarter angle at the back, I think, is the favourite angle for the Legend. The video doesn't really pick up on it, in all honesty, but it is a nicely proportioned car. And again, it's aged very, very well. Build, panel gaps, all absolutely beautiful, I have to say, on both cars. They are beautifully made cars. And low mileage, by the way. The Legend's only done 68,000 miles. I think that's right. I'll get into the car in a minute. Suddenly my mind's gone completely fuzzy on that one. And the Lexus here has done just 55,000, I think. No, 50,000. Should have checked those things, shouldn't I? But again, from the back, the Lexus, again, they're both got nice proportions to them, nice stances. They're not going to win beauty prizes necessarily, but I don't think that was the design criteria for them. They both do exactly what their owners like. They don't shout at people. They've not got that look about them, but they're both very nicely done, and as I said, both are superbly made cars. So moving on to kind of the practicality, I guess. Boot size, Legend wins this one hands down. It's a massive boot, and again, really, really nicely finished inside. Fabrics are nicely done, all bolted together beautifully. The Lexus, again, you can't fault the quality of it, you can fault the size of it. Obviously, being a hybrid, the hybrid battery really does eat into them, so it is much smaller than the Legend. The 300, by comparison, would be very similar to the Legend in that sense. Coming to the back of the cars first, again, it's just first impressions. You've got a black leather interior in the Lexus. Sorry, just let the car go by. They are big in the back. There's lots and lots and lots of legroom. Again, the build inside is second to none. They are beautifully bolted together cars and a lovely place to sit, and it's clearly a premium finish. Been a bit unfair on the Legend actually as well when I come into the back. The Legend hasn't been cleaned yet, whereas the Lexus has, but as I said, that is very, very clean indeed. It's a different feel to the interior just because it's got the lighter leather interior, but like the Lexus, loads of room in the back, very nicely appointed and beautifully put together. Come to the front on the Lexus first. Again, first impressions are, it's just really beautifully done, and you wouldn't say the car was the age it was. It doesn't look like that at all. It's got a feel of a much newer car when you look inside it in terms of the way it looks, not necessarily the condition. So again, coming same point on the Legend this time. Again, the first impressions, again, it's a kind of the same feel but totally different. It's kind of a lovely warm feeling in the Legend, really nicely done. It probably looks older in terms of its styling inside the car, which it almost certainly is, in all honesty. So sitting inside the Legend, the Lexus first, again, it feels more modern in here, I have to say. The layout, I guess the thing that gets me most is probably the centre section here, because it's slightly wider than the Legend in terms of the way it's set up. It makes the car feel bigger inside, which it almost certainly isn't. The colour choices, the tactile feel of the surfaces inside the car are very similar indeed. They are beautifully done. I'd have to say that the Lexus wins in terms of the binnacle here, and the detailing of the dials looks a sort of step up on the Legend, certainly. But both cars, again, given the age of the vehicles, not only are they in lovely condition, but they also just feel like a much more modern place to sit than you give them credit for, in all honesty. But the Lexus does feel particularly special in here, I have to say. So sitting inside the Legend now, I keep wanting to say the other every time. It's absolutely annoying. Again, the quality you cannot fault. It is beautifully put together. The differences are subtle. Basically, on the Legend, obviously you get the wood going across the centre of the trim, whereas on the Lexus you tend to get it down here, and I think it works better down in the lower section. It just feels more premium in that sense. Premium is how it feels, not how it's constructed, because again, both are beautifully constructed cars. When you come to the dash binnacle, which again on Hondas I generally love, and these are, still looks absolutely fantastic, but again I would have to say that the Lexus, in terms of the dials, the way they look, feels slightly more premium. But both are lovely places to sit. They both offer a wonderfully comfortable environment, very highly equipped interiors as well, and as I said, both are astonishingly well made cars. So coming to the road test section actually now, starting with the Lexus. It was a bit of a flip of the coin as to which one was going to be first, but the Lexus won in that sense. The first thing you notice when you get in the Lexus, obviously you've got a push button start. Again, it feels slightly more modern. Generally, because it's a hybrid, it tends to start silently. It kind of whirs into life. There's no old-fashioned cranking of the key and engine kicking in. So it's a slightly different feel experience, and the whole sensation, which is why I love the hybrids, by the way, is that first motion away. It's really smooth. It's very kind of electric car feel. There's nothing to grate. There's no kind of clunk in taking up drive. And for those that live, I guess, sort of in built-up areas, town, cities, that can actually be quite a big thing. Because lots of low-speed manoeuvring, conventional cars can actually feel quite clumsy. And I think that's something that sort of it's kind of a sense of occasion with the car, which I really like. Beyond that, the thing you hit with straight away is just how quiet it is. I mean, obviously, just tootling through the village at 30 miles an hour, you'd expect it to be quiet, but it has that kind of serenity, that kind of calmness about the interior, everything about it. The interior fan on its lowest setting is currently making more noise than the car itself. It gives you an indication just how quiet these things are. But again, just classic, just pull away there, just so smooth, so smooth. The feeling straight away when you sat in the car, the seats are really nice and supportive. They're nicely bolstered driving position as you'd expect, absolutely spot on. You can't fail to get comfortable. You've got multi-way adjustments on the electric seats with memory settings, obviously, electric steering wheel adjustment on the car as well. So in terms of getting a comfortable seating position, it's very, very easy indeed. And when you're sat in the car, you're then faced with a dash that you've got to use on the move, in effect. And it is a very, very simple interior to operate in terms of controls, the layout, but it looks fantastic. It still looks fantastic. You've got this lovely screen integrated with little sort of chrome surround to it, dials on either side. A day in the car and it's very easy to come to terms with. All works beautifully on the car. You've got your climate control, your audio obviously, and your sat nav all built into there. But it works beautifully. The detailing, the buttons, the actuation, all have a high quality of appeal to them. I mean, they are beautifully engineered, and I love the tiny details. I really do. What I don't like, and I've never liked on Lexus cars, is the way the sat nav does your addresses via kind of partial postcodes. I kind of work it out each time I use a sat nav and never kind of remember how to do it. It's really frustrating. I'm sure there's an easy way of doing it. I've never fathomed it out. If someone can explain it to me, then please do. Beyond that, the stereo, Mark Levinson system is astonishing in the car. Coming back to driving as we're picking up speed now to sort of 40-ish miles an hour, still the same level of noise. It's just wonderfully smooth. I've not explored or tapped into the engine's performance at all, but you can just kind of flow with this car. I think the overriding impression is of kind of silence, is of absolute refinement, which is astonishing. But also, we are talking about a car that's got nudging 300 horsepower, and it is a very, very quick car. I'd like to be able to prove it, because unfortunately with the lorry in front it's hard to do so unless there's going to be a gap manifest itself in a second where I can get past, which there is. So that's up to 60, 70 miles an hour, sorry, just under 70, so I'm backing off to get to 60 because it picks up speed so quickly and so quietly. I mean, perfect example, wasn't expecting to have to do it, but there you go. I mean, it is the powertrain, for want of a better expression, is absolutely incredible. The performance it gives you access very quietly. Oh, look at that prelude. You don't see many of those. Wow, lovely. Yeah, I mean, you put your foot down, you can hit it. It's got a sweet note, but you get up to the legal limit so quickly. Ordinarily, you wouldn't be putting your foot down that hard, but what you hear is smooth. It's pleasing to the ear. Now Lexus have obviously latched on to kind of range and anxiety with electric cars. They're now referring to their hybrid cars as self-charging hybrids, more so than ever. The point of it is basically you run this car like a normal car. You just put fuel in it, drive the car, and you've got a minute to the pump. You're not half an hour of waiting for the thing to charge up. I mean, it is a piece of engineering that's astonishing for the age and vintage of car. And when you compare it to other cars in its class, not just the Legend, by the way, it's right up there with any of the great powertrains, because it does it. The design criteria for these cars, and I come back to it with the Legend in a second when I do the road test for that. My frustration has always been that when the motoring press tested both these cars when they were new, they'd pitch them against their usual candidates, BMW, Mercedes, Audis, of their time. And generally, they'd always go with, their personal favourites. The problem is nothing to do with that, because everyone's entitled to their opinions. It doesn't mean I'm right, far from it, But the most road testers that drove them were basically kind of, what they are, complete petrol heads, and all the better for it. But they want to be driving around in M5s and Ferraris and goodness knows what else in a mega powerful cars, because that's what excites them. These don't. They don't at all. So they're quite damning when they talk about them. They don't get the car. Now, the people that buy these, generally speaking, are people that want to be pampered, they want to be comfortable, they want a reliable, solid car, and that's what both these cars give. But they do it in very different ways, even though they're so similar in so many ways. You know, when you drive the Lexus as I am now, the steering is fluid without being sporty. The suspension is beautifully comfortable and controlled and damped, but not sporty. But does that mean it doesn't go through the corners well? No, it actually goes through the corners very well indeed, very accurately, really precise. It follows faithfully as you go through. It's not going to excite you, but for 99% of the time you're driving the car, it's a pleasure to sit in one of these cars. Is there anything I don't like? Very little, because you know, when you turn into the corners, you do get a little motion with the car, but nothing. You know, most people won't be charging on hard. I mean, if I was going to advise someone, would you buy this car if you want to get from A to B as fast as you possibly can? No, it's not that kind of car. Do you want to buy the car to get you from A to B really comfortably, very reliably? Then yeah, it's pretty much perfect for that. And that's where the Motoring Press let themselves down. They always go. They always say at the end of it, I'd happily live to have that kind of harder edge, you know, the sharper handling. But would they really? You know, would they, when they're kind of in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever age they are, would they really want to? Well, no. But this isn't going to appeal to a 20-year-old in any way. They'll think it's lovely and quite comfortable, but it's not going to appeal to them. It appeals to people probably more, how can I put this politely? Mature, definitely, in terms of age, certainly. Because, you know, some people, you start to find you want creature comforts. You want to get into a car that will work. And again, when you look at both of these cars, what the Motoring Press will not take into account when they're new, or it doesn't have enough of an impact on their decision, in my opinion, is running these cars for 10, 13, 14, 15, 20 years. How are they actually going to stand up after all that time in terms of ownership outside of manufacturer's warranty, where you've got to put your hand in your pockets? They'll all go wrong. Every single manufacturer of car, doesn't matter which car you have, they'll all go wrong at some point. It might be trivial, it might be serious, but they'll all have their issues. The reality is, if you buy one of the German manufacturers, you'll probably have a lot more of the issues, and a lot of them will be more serious. It's fact. It's, you know, it's not a criticism, it's just a fact. And if you can live with that and understand that's going to happen and want something sporty, then, you know, it's a fine decision to make. But this car, sitting in it now, you know, it beggars belief it's 12 years old for a start, because it doesn't drive like that. It is a wonderfully refined car. It's got an astonishing engine. It's got a lovely chassis for what someone who would want this type of ride to give you. I mean, it's perfect in that sense. It's got a level of build and quietness and calmness on a different level to virtually anything in its class. I can't think of anything I've driven that is as comforting and as pampering as this car. It's a beautiful place to sit. But obviously I'm now going to jump in the Legend after this one and see, because obviously, as I said, you know, it's always been my personal favourite. I've always loved them, but I've always owned them a few years apart. So again, it's hard to kind of woodpecker to really judge them, you know, fairly, I guess. But when I've got the opportunity to literally do this video and jump from one to the other, then it's as I said, an opportunity not to be missed. But as I said, as a drive in this car, yeah, it's absolutely superb, I have to say. So moving on to the Legend now. I think the first sensations you get when you sat inside the car, I mean, again, it's a very nice interior. It's very warming. It feels classier than your average car of its era. It probably, again, as I mentioned before, it doesn't feel as modern as the Lexus inside. It has a different sort of charm to it, I guess, in a different way. The Lexus, I'd say, definitely has the edge in terms of kind of pretensions of being luxurious. There's no two ways about it. Honda have gone for a more obvious way of doing it, sort of plush leather, nice colourings, slap of wood on the doors. But both of them absolutely beautifully made. Where the Honda is subtly different, I guess, is when you look like this centre stack here. I know what they're trying to do. It looks like a mini hi-fi system, and it is beautiful in the detailing and the switch gear, actuation, sound reproduction is fantastic as well, by the way. It really is. It's wonderful to use. It's just not possibly quite as pleasing on the eye. That's what I'd say. But as you sort of pull away and move forward in the car, you're immediately obvious that you're in a more conventional car than the Lexus. It has more conventional feel, sound to it. The propulsion going forward, you get the first gear change, you can feel it, where you just don't feel it in the Lexus at all. And that's not to say it's bad in here at all, it's just different. You're also very well aware that the car feels busier on the road. There's more motion going on with the suspension, there's more activity there. But again, equally, it feels much more alive. The chassis feels, even at low speed, as though it's wanting to do things that the Lexus doesn't want to do. But also very comfortable. The damping in the car is really nice. I'm going to go off a complete tangent now, because I always do this kind of thing and then try and remember to where I get back where it was originally. One thing I would say, definitely, Honda did a refresh on this car in, I think it was 2008, and they changed a few things on the car, noticeably with the suspension. And they always did the same thing, Honda. They did it on the generation before that as well, where they got a lovely base, and then they take to heart the criticism levelled at them by the press, and then think that by giving it stiffer shocks and thicker mounts and this kind of stuff, and increasing rigidity, it would turn it into a sports car. It doesn't. It actually, I think it ruined the ride on the later ones. It was still comfortable, but it was fidgety, whereas this one wasn't. This has a sort of compliance to it, which the later one definitely just doesn't have. But coming back to the engine, as I tried to remember what I was going to say, immediately you've got this very different feel, very different sound. The V6 in this, I think it's J-Series engine, is a beautiful piece of engineering. Again, on the move here, very quiet indeed. Hardly really hear it, but when you put your foot down, immediately, there's more noise that sort of greets you. Put your foot down, but it's a lovely sounding V6. It really is, and it absolutely pulls so hard. It's astonishing, again, for the age it was in, the era it was in, and again, completely missed by the press. They really just didn't get how good this engine was and how well it worked with the gearbox in the car. It's only if you push it incredibly hard, right at the top of the rev range, will it start to sound slightly more strained. But even then, if I put a foot down now, just that last 500 just got slightly more shrill, but before that it's just sound. You've got a beautiful hard-edged induction noise. I love it. I love that sound. It is more audible. It is slightly louder than the Lexus. It's going about its business in a completely different way, but getting to the same speeds just as quickly, if not more quickly. A brilliant power unit, and as I said, the gearbox works beautifully. It's an old-fashioned 5-speed gearbox, which would sound antiquated by modern standards, but actually works brilliantly well. There's none of the fussiness and gear changes at low speed. The pickup straight away is keen, eager. It's a totally different feel to the car. I can't believe how different they are, actually. On the move, the steering, first thing I'd say is, why did Honda put such a big steering wheel in the car and such an ugly steering wheel as well? It is hideous. It's too big. It just doesn't need to be that big. You've got this massive airbag in the middle in the same colour as everything else. You know, if it was black, maybe it'd break things up a bit better. I don't know. But the steering itself, again, completely unappreciated, because this is going to be the big difference between the two cars. The chassis and the steering and the way the car kind of goes through corners, on top of which you've got one of the greatest four-wheel drive systems ever produced, and not only in terms of reliability, but in terms of how it actually works. Basically, most of its competitors at its time would have been big rear-wheel drive, as with the Lexus cars, which, perfectly good road surfaces, absolutely fine. Wintry, autumnal days, leaves on the ground, terrifying if you get your foot down too hard too soon. This one, you can put your foot down hard. The way it works is absolutely sensational. You know, it almost encourages you to put your foot down more. It pulls the front end of the car around. It's odd but brilliant in the way it does it. It's so confidence inspiring. Driving along now, same speed as the Lexus on the same bit of road, the Lexus kind of wafted along and felt a little bit, very much like a gentleman's car. This is very comfortable, although not as comfortable. It's totally different to the corners. You don't get the same sort of body motion. I'm coming into a corner much quicker than I would have done ordinarily. Turn in, completely no fuss at all. That's where this car is genius. That is where it is absolute genius. And again, completely missed at the time by the press. Because I think I remember seeing one being chucked around Anglesey against a BMW at the time, and it was 3 seconds lap slower. That it wasn't about chasing lap times. It never was. It was all about basically, 5 years down the line when you're owning a Legend, and suddenly it's got 50, 60, 70 or 69,000 miles on the clock. Tyres have started to wear down. They've lost a bit of grip. Suspension's got a bit more movement in it. All those things. It's not quite as crisp as it was when it was new or when they tested it. And then see how they compare then on a horrible night back, and when you're not in the mood to do a road test, you just want to commute from A to B, but it's hideous road conditions, sleet, snow, all that kind of stuff. This is one of the most accomplished luxury saloons you'll ever drive. I mean, it really is amazing, which is why we've sold a few of these over the years, and people that buy them get them. They completely understand them. It is a lovely car, I have to say. When I first got in it, when I first drove it, all my Honda bias aside, I was kind of thinking, I think I'm going to prefer the Lexus, and I'm still unsure, by the way, so I'll do the little verdict at the end. The more you drive the Legend, the more you appreciate it, I have to say. That's the one thing I'd say with absolute certainty. If you just jumped in them and went for a 2-minute test drive, I reckon 99.99% of people would buy the Lexus. Simple as that. With it sitting in the car, how smooth, how quiet. It's a wonderful test drive car, and also lovely to own. So the Legend will feel slightly noisier, slightly cruder, but I'm using crude only by comparison to the Lexus. Compared to anything else, it's perfect. But also, just slightly busier on the road. But then, as I said, the more you drive it, the more you realise, there's something actually very, very special about this car, which I'd kind of forgotten and thought perhaps it wasn't as special as I thought, but it is. Coming back to the interior of the car, again, I'd say the seats in this, in some ways, were slightly more comfortable. I've got slightly more bolstering on the sides here. Quite a narrow in the frame, but it really does. I think the seats are slightly better than the Lexus, but only marginally. Again, driving position, can't fault. You've got multi-way adjuster, the same as you have in the Lexus. As I said in the earlier part of the video, the dash pinnacle front, I prefer the Lexus. I have to say, it's quite simple. I much prefer the sat nav in this one. How to use it, it's much easier, much better. The other stuff, it becomes personal preference. That's why I always think, again, video, sort of road tests, all boils down to me or the person that's doing it. It's their personal opinion. The only facts are 0 to 60, decibel levels, dimensions, weights. They're facts. The other stuff is purely personal opinion, and that is my issue with so many of these road tests, which I keep harping back to. Because I have to say, if you jumped in one of those cars, or its competitors' cars, now a 2007 version, I reckon they'd all feel a lot older, more clumsy than these things. But anyway, there we go. So now I guess it's verdict time. Sat inside the Legend, staring at the Lexus over there. As I said, really, just after driving the Legend, it is incredibly hard to pick. And it does come down to personal preference. Neither car is going to leave you shortchanged in any way. That if your priority is pure out and out comfort, luxury, quietness, then it'd be the Lexus, definitely. If you still want some semblance of driver enjoyment, I guess, in terms of handling, you need four-wheel drive, you want the confidence of four-wheel drive, then the Legend. Both will make astonishingly good cars to drive and own and make you feel very, very special indeed. Me, I think, and it is so close, I would probably still, after all of it, and I think 80% through this video, I was convinced I was going to pick the Lexus for so many reasons. And perhaps I'm actually falling into the same trap that those road testers do after I've maligned them and said that they always pick the one that, pleases them in handling, nothing else. And here I am possibly doing the same thing. But for me, I think I would still have the Legend, only because I love this engine. I love it. And the chassis is amazing for the type of car it is. But in every other sense, it's a very honourable draw. They are both amazing cars. As I said, this isn't a slick professional video. You can tell that straight away. I've had a bit of time to be able to do this. It was an opportunity I couldn't miss. And if it's of any help to anybody, then that's absolutely fine. Feel free to comment, say whatever you like. I'll take it on the chin.